He patrolled the lobby silently every day, a seemingly ordinary security guard. But what a powerful CEO heard next would redefine talent, expose hidden bias, and stun an entire corporate empire. Most people at Hallberg International barely noticed the security staff. Not out of malice, just routine. They blended into the background, part of the quiet hum of the building. It was a bustling Monday morning in downtown Fort Worth, Texas. The company's main lobby buzzed with the rhythmic clack of shoes on polished marble, the incessant tapping of fingers on phones, and the low murmur of conversations about deadlines and quarterly projections. Everyone clutched their coffee cups like liquid courage. Jonathan Kellerman, the CEO of Hallberg International, was a man of global vision. He navigated the complex world of international logistics, having built this company from a regional player into a global powerhouse. His walk from the parking garage to the 18th floor executive suite was usually a blur of focused thought. But today, something stopped him cold. A voice. Not just any voice. It was fluent, sharp, and rolled through a language he hadn't heard since his last frantic call to their Shanghai office, Mandarin. He glanced around, assuming it was an early international sales rep, then he saw him. Marcus "Grizzly" Sanders, a man in his late 60s, a black veteran with a quiet dignity that belied his simple security uniform. His short, salt and pepper hair was neatly cropped, his eyes holding a depth that spoke of untold stories. He was standing near the touchscreen lobby directory, calmly gesturing and speaking to an older man in a navy jacket and thick-rimmed glasses. The man looked a mixture of confused and relieved. Marcus's voice was warm yet firm, patiently directing the visitor toward the elevators. Kellerman narrowed his eyes. He'd seen Marcus before, during late meetings, a silent, polite presence. He didn't even know his first name. But here he was, effortlessly translating complex building logistics in a language that stumped most of their high-paid, young, global specialists. A faint pang of guilt pricked Kellerman. He'd preached diversity, recruited worldwide, yet this man, right under his nose, possessed a hidden depth he'd utterly missed. As he watched, Marcus smoothly concluded the Mandarin conversation and turned to a delivery man holding a clipboard. Without missing a beat, he switched into fluent Spanish. The delivery man blinked in surprise, then stammered a grateful, "Gracias." Then, just as casually, Marcus turned to a vendor nearby, looking bewildered at a set of mislabeled boxes. "Se ha marcado mal el de la conferencia B, es el de la sala de juntas," he advised in crisp French, pointing with a subtle, knowing smile. Kellerman's jaw tightened. Not in anger, but a deeper, more unsettling realization. He'd spent decades in global logistics, hired countless translators, built cross-cultural training programs. Yet, the most linguistically gifted person he'd encountered in months was walking the halls as a security guard, opening doors for people who barely saw him. This wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was a profound failure of perception. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, a new curiosity overriding his usual CEO urgency. "Excuse me." Kellerman's voice was softer than usual, more question than command. Marcus turned, startled but composed, his military training evident in his quick, steady posture. "Yes, sir," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "That was Mandarin, right?" Kellerman asked, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Yes, sir." "You speak it fluently?" "Yes." "And Spanish?" "French?" Marcus nodded. "Also Portuguese, German, Arabic, Italian, Swahili. And I read Latin, but I don't really count that." Kellerman blinked. "You're telling me you speak 9 languages?" "Yes, sir." There was no pride in his tone, no arrogance, just the simple truth, delivered with the straightness of a level beam. Kellerman stared, trying to reconcile the image of a silent security guard with that of a walking United Nations. "What's your name?" he finally asked. "Marcus Sanders." "Mr. Sanders," Kellerman began, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "Are you free for a few minutes?" Marcus's brow raised slightly. Now? He asked, a hint of surprise in his voice. Kellerman nodded. Yes. I'd like to talk to you in my office. He noticed a flicker of hesitation in Marcus's eyes, not fear, but the ingrained reflex of someone used to being ignored, underestimated, or even dismissed. After a moment, Marcus slowly nodded. All right. Kellerman pressed the elevator button, holding the door open as Marcus stepped inside. As the lift began its ascent toward the executive floor, a silence settled between them, different from the lobby's buzz. I've worked here for 15 years, Marcus said suddenly, his voice quiet, almost a whisper against the rising hum of the elevator. Never thought I'd be invited up. Kellerman turned towards him, a small, quiet smile touching his lips. You might be surprised how quickly things can change. He had no idea how profound that change would be, not just for Marcus, but for the entire company, and for himself. The elevator chimed, and its doors slid open. Marcus stepped out first, his sensible security shoes making barely a sound on the polished wood floor of the executive hallway. The air here smelled of citrus and polished leather, the scent of money, if you had to put a label on it. Kellerman's assistant, a young woman named Sarah, looked up, wide-eyed at the sight of Marcus beside the CEO. Kellerman offered no explanation, just a curt nod for her to let them through. Once inside the glass-walled office, Kellerman gestured to a chair across from his sprawling desk. Please, have a seat, Mr. Sanders. Marcus sat carefully, his hands folded in his lap, his eyes slowly taking in the room. He wasn't impressed, he was simply observant. A large world map, dotted with colored pins, hung behind Kellerman. On a side table, a tray of gleaming espresso cups, a photo of Kellerman's 2 daughters, and a slightly dusty award from a trade conference in Brussels. Kellerman sat opposite him, leaning forward slightly. So, Marcus, he began, his voice direct. I'm going to be honest. I didn't expect to have this conversation today. But I just heard you speak 3 languages like you were flipping light switches. And I need to understand, how does someone with your evident talents end up working here, as a security guard? For a second, Marcus didn't answer. His eyes flicked toward the vast window overlooking the city, then back to Kellerman. You got time for the truth? I wouldn't have asked otherwise, Kellerman replied softly. Marcus sighed, a slow, deep exhalation. All right, then. He rubbed his palms together, as if warming up for the words. I was born in Mobile, Alabama. Only child. My dad was a stevedore, my mom a seamstress. They didn't have much, but they worked hard, pushed education like it was salvation. I earned a full scholarship to Morehouse College, majored in linguistics, then joined the Army after graduating. I trained as a Green Beret, specializing in human intelligence and language acquisition. Spent years in the field, mostly in the Middle East and parts of Eastern Europe. Languages were my tools, my shield, my way of understanding the battlefield. He paused, a flicker of distant memories in his eyes. Was on a deployment in Afghanistan, a routine recon mission that went sideways. An IED hit our convoy. Protected my team leader, but took a bad shrapnel hit myself. Severed nerves, permanent damage. Medically retired from the army, decorated, but my combat days were over. His voice didn't waver, yet the weight of the words hung in the air. Came home, but life had other plans. My wife, she got sick. A rare, aggressive autoimmune disease. Needed constant care, expensive treatments. My military pension and initial benefits weren't enough. So, I took what I could find. Jobs that allowed me to be home for her, to get her to appointments. He tilted his head slightly, as if rewinding the reel of memory. Worked odd jobs for a while. Then a supervisor here offered me the night security shifts. It paid the bills, let me take care of my wife during the day. That's how I got here. Protecting this building, just like I protected my unit. He cleared his throat. But the languages, I never stopped learning. Borrowed textbooks from the library, listened to international news on shortwave radio, read newspapers in 5 different tongues just to stay sharp. It's what I do. It's the only thing I do that makes me feel like I still matter, like the years I served still count for something. His voice was plain, unadorned, no hint of self-pity or bitterness. Most people never asked, he added, his gaze meeting Kellerman's. They saw the uniform. And they assumed. That last word, assumed, hung heavy in the air. Kellerman sat back, the weight of Marcus's story settling into his chest like a stone. He exhaled slowly. Marcus Sanders was brilliant. That much was blindingly obvious now. But he wasn't asking for pity or a handout. He was giving the truth. Clean, clear, and utterly heartbreaking. You ever think about doing anything else? Kellerman asked, his voice barely a whisper. Marcus gave a small shrug, his shoulders, though broad, carrying an unseen burden. Sometimes. But it's hard to dream when your rent's due, and your wife needs medication. I made a commitment to her, just like I did to my country. Silence fell again, but it was different now, denser, heavy with unspoken respect and dawning realization. Kellerman reached for his notebook, jotting down a few lines. What are you writing? Marcus asked, his voice calm, but a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Kellerman looked up. Ideas. Big ones. He had no idea how quickly those ideas would change everything. The conversation stuck with Kellerman all day, even during critical budget reviews and high-stakes vendor calls. His mind kept circling back to that morning, to Marcus Sanders. His calm voice, the quiet way he'd listed 9 languages like they were nothing, the stark reality of his sacrifice and resilience. That kind of fluency didn't just happen, it took years of discipline, curiosity, and an unwavering heart, traits forged in military service. Around 3:45 p.m., Kellerman left the executive floor and rode the elevator down to the building's service level. He wanted to see something for himself, to truly understand the world Marcus inhabited daily. Down there, the air was warmer, smelling faintly of cleaning supplies and stale coffee. The off-white walls were scuffed from carts and boots, a stark contrast to the polished chrome and glass upstairs. He passed maintenance crews, break rooms, stacks of bottled water, and finally reached the security office. He spotted Marcus through the open door, methodically checking equipment. Mind if I bother you again? Kellerman asked, stepping inside. Marcus turned, slightly startled, but his composure quickly returned. You came down here, sir? He asked, a hint of surprise in his voice. Kellerman smiled. Couldn't stop thinking about our talk. Listen, I have a favor to ask. Marcus wiped his hands on his uniform shirt. What kind of favor? There's a critical meeting upstairs, Kellerman explained. A delegation from our Sao Paulo office arrived early, and our Portuguese translator canceled last minute. Can you help? Marcus hesitated for only a second. Portuguese. Yes, I can do that. Minutes later, they were in conference room 4C. 4 Brazilian executives sat awkwardly, checking their phones, clearly frustrated by the communication barrier. Marcus stepped in quietly, nodded, and began speaking in smooth, confident Portuguese. Kellerman watched as the entire room shifted. Shoulders relaxed, anxious expressions eased, eye contact sharpened. Marcus wasn't just translating words, he was bridging a cultural chasm, making people feel understood, seen, and respected. When one of the visitors cracked a joke in Portuguese, Marcus responded with a warm laugh and a return quip that had them all chuckling. Kellerman didn't understand a word, but he understood connection. He understood trust being built. After 20 minutes, the meeting wrapped up. One of the Brazilian executives turned to Kellerman and said in perfectly accented English, "He's better than anyone we've worked with this year. He has a way, a presence. Where did you find him? He commands respect." Kellerman looked at Marcus, who was already stacking empty coffee cups on a tray, his movements efficient and precise. "Right here," Kellerman replied, a quiet pride in his voice. Back in the hallway, Kellerman caught up with him. "You ever do professional translation before?" Marcus shook his head. "Just helped folks out in military hospitals, government offices, things like that. No certificates, no time for formal schooling. My wife needed me more. Her treatments, they were constant." Kellerman nodded, the weight of Marcus's sacrifice pressing on him. "And where is she now?" Marcus's expression softened, a hint of sorrow in his eyes. "She passed away last year, sir. After a long fight. I promised her I'd keep going. I owe it to her." They stood in silence for a moment, the usual CEO-employee dynamic momentarily erased. Just two men talking about life, loss, and enduring purpose. They returned to the service level where Marcus clocked back in. He had 2 more floors to patrol before shift change. But before he left, he said something that stuck with Kellerman. "I didn't do anything special today, sir." Kellerman looked at him, eyebrows raised. "That's not how it looked to me, Mr. Sanders." Marcus gave him a small, knowing smile and walked off, disappearing into the fluorescent glow of the hallway. That night, Kellerman sat in his car for a long time before driving home. He thought about everything, the pressure to grow the company, the investor meetings, the endless discussions on diversity and untapped talent. All this time, they'd been looking outside, recruiting globally, searching for new blood. But sometimes the gold's already in your backyard. And once you realize that, the real question becomes, what are you going to do about it? The next morning, Marcus's security badge beeped at the wrong time. He had just finished his early morning patrol of the East Lobby when Ron, his supervisor, tapped him on the shoulder. Ron's expression wasn't annoyed, but it definitely wasn't normal either. "Hey, Marcus," Ron began, his voice a little strained. "Mr. Kellerman asked to see you again. Top floor." Marcus blinked. "Did I do something wrong?" Ron shook his head. "He didn't say. Just told me to send you up." Marcus carefully wiped his hands on a clean towel he kept in his belt, the familiar feel of the fabric a small comfort. He followed the same path he'd taken the day before, but this time, it felt different. Everyone in the building seemed to notice him. People he passed looked up from their phones, some whispered, and one of the receptionists even gave him a polite, knowing smile, as if she held a secret he didn't. The whispers, he sensed, were about him. When he walked into the executive suite, Kellerman stood near the vast window, sipping black coffee and staring out at the Fort Worth skyline. "Come in, Marcus," he said, not turning around yet. Marcus stood quietly by the door, a disciplined military posture, until Kellerman finally faced him. "I've been thinking," Kellerman said, placing his mug on a coaster with a decisive click. "About talent waste. How many incredibly capable people never get a real shot? Not because they're not good enough, but because nobody looks twice. Nobody looks past the uniform, or the assumptions." Marcus said nothing. He didn't trust easy praise. He'd seen too many people talk big and do little in his lifetime, especially in the civilian world. He had witnessed promises broken, and sacrifices unacknowledged. "I want to create a new position," Kellerman continued, his eyes meeting Marcus's. "One that didn't exist before. Something this company badly needs, even if we didn't know it. Something that leverages the kind of unique, invaluable experience you possess." Marcus furrowed his brow slightly. "For what, sir?" "Cultural liaison for international affairs," Kellerman stated, the words rolling off his tongue with a newfound conviction. "Someone who can speak the languages, yes. But more importantly, someone who can read between the lines. Someone who understands deep cultural nuances, handles international visitors, vendors, complex documents, all the global touch points where we're constantly fumbling. Someone with the discipline, the resilience, the strategic mind forged in a place like the Green Berets." Marcus's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He stared at Kellerman, disbelief warring with a cautious hope. "You're qualified," Kellerman pressed on, his voice firm. Probably more than most of the people in our leadership team, honestly. And you've already proved you can handle it with grace, patience, and brains. You proved it yesterday. Marcus stared at him, eyes narrowing slightly. This real, sir. As real as it gets, Marcus. But I don't have a college degree. Not a civilian one, anyway, Marcus finally managed, the old societal roadblocks resurfacing. Kellerman scoffed gently. You have something better. Lived experience. Unwavering commitment. And fluency in 9 languages that you cultivated through decades of service and personal sacrifice. You think I care about a piece of paper, Marcus? When there's gold standing right in front of me? Marcus shifted his weight, still unsure. Why me, sir? There are other people here. Kellerman looked directly at him, his gaze unwavering. Because I watched you solve 3 complex problems in 3 different languages before 9 a.m. yesterday. And because I'm tired of walking past people like you. People doing twice the work for half the credit. People who have served this country, and who are then often overlooked by the very society they protected. Marcus crossed his arms, a slight sigh escaping him. You know what people are going to say. He knew the whispers, diversity hire, checking a box, affirmative action. The kind of quiet prejudice that black veterans, especially, often faced. I don't care, Kellerman stated simply. They'll get over it, or they won't. Either way, we're moving forward. Marcus stared at him for a long moment, then let out a slow, deliberate breath. I've never had an office job, he said, his voice quiet, almost reflective. Never had a title like that. You'll learn fast, Kellerman assured him. You're a Green Beret, you adapt. I have no doubt. I don't have a wardrobe for this kind of thing, Marcus added, a hint of dry humor in his voice. Kellerman smiled. I'll have HR send a clothing stipend. We'll make sure you have everything you need to feel comfortable and professional. You thought of everything, huh? Marcus chuckled, a rare, genuine sound. I'm trying. A long pause stretched between them, filled with unspoken understanding. Then Marcus asked softly, what about my shift downstairs? Who replaces me? Kellerman smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. We'll find someone, Marcus. But no one can replace you. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Marcus looked down at his hands, calloused from years of physical work, then back up at Kellerman. You sure this isn't some kind of favor, sir? Kellerman shook his head slowly, his expression earnest. This is overdue recognition, Marcus. This is about seeing talent, true talent, for what it is. Marcus bit his lip, his eyes glistening for a fleeting moment, but he blinked the tears away before they could fall. It was the training, the discipline, the Green Beret in him refusing to break composure. All right, then, he said, his voice firm, filled with a newfound resolve. Let's see what I can do. He extended his hand. Kellerman shook it. It wasn't just a handshake. It was a promise, a partnership, and history being rewritten for both of them, and for the hidden talent within those glass walls. But what neither of them expected was how everyone else in the building would react, and the storm that was brewing. By Wednesday, the news had traveled faster than the elevators. Marcus Sanders, the quiet security guard from the night shift, had been promoted to an executive-level position, cultural liaison for international affairs. Nobody knew the full story, just whispers. That he spoke a bunch of languages. That the CEO himself had chosen him. That he might have some kind of secret background, maybe government work, maybe even special forces. The gossip bounced from cubicle to conference room. Some folks were curious, some genuinely smiled and said, good for him. But not everyone was clapping. In the staff lounge, 2 marketing assistants, both young, fresh out of top universities, leaned close over their organic salads. I'm just saying, one whispered, a hint of resentment in her voice. I have a master's in international business, and I've been waiting 2 years for a promotion. This guy was checking IDs and cleaning doors last week. Her friend shrugged. Maybe he knows something we don't. Oh, please, the first one scoffed. It's Kellerman trying to look progressive. Check a box. Affirmative action. That same energy trickled into boardrooms and Slack messages. Quiet resentment mixed with confusion. People weren't used to upward moves coming from outside the usual corporate ladder, especially not from someone who looked like Marcus, who had spent decades in what they perceived as a low-skill job. Marcus felt it the second he stepped into his new office on the 12th floor. It was modest, just a desk, a small plant, and a computer he hadn't touched yet. But to him, it felt like another planet, a world he was now tasked to navigate, not just guard. When HR finished onboarding him, he asked if he could keep his old security uniform. Not to wear, but to remind himself. That afternoon, he met with Victor, head of international operations. Victor walked in with a clipboard and tight, suspicious eyes. He didn't shake Marcus's hand. He didn't sit. So, you're the new liaison, he said, his voice flat, like it was a bad joke wrapped in politeness. Marcus looked up, his gaze steady. That's what I'm told. You have experience in corporate environments? Victor challenged. Marcus gave a small, dry smile. Only from the outside looking in, sir. But I assure you, my military training has prepared me for handling complex, high-pressure situations, and understanding diverse cultures on a very practical level. Victor didn't laugh. He dropped a thick folder on Marcus's desk. I've got urgent reports from Italy, pending contracts from our Dubai partners, and an entire vendor issue in Sao Paulo that's costing us millions. Think you can manage that? Or is this just for show? Marcus stood up slowly, his posture commanding respect. I'll need a few hours to review, sir. But yes. I believe I can manage it and deliver results. Victor grunted, an unconvinced sound, and walked out. Later that night, Kellerman stopped by Marcus's office. How's day one? Marcus exhaled, leaning back in his chair. I've had worse, sir. Combat, for instance. Kellerman chuckled. Victor give you a hard time? He doesn't scare me. I figured, Kellerman said, his smile fading slightly. Marcus paused, then asked, but can I ask you something, sir? Anything. Why now? Why me? You could have just given me a bonus and kept moving. Kellerman leaned against the door frame, his expression thoughtful. Because I saw myself in you, Marcus. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You were a security guard, sir. No, Kellerman replied, a faint smile. But I was overlooked a lot. I came from nothing. My dad fixed cars in a town no one visits. I worked 3 jobs through college. People thought I didn't belong in rooms like this. He gestured around the executive floor. Marcus nodded slowly. Now you're the one deciding who gets in. Kellerman nodded back. Exactly. You have a story, Marcus. A real one. And now you've got a platform. A platform for all the other Marcus Sanders out there who have been overlooked. Then he turned to leave. As the door clicked behind him, Marcus looked around his new office. He remembered the years he'd cried in quiet corners of the building during lunch breaks, the nights he came home with aching feet and barely enough energy to heat up soup, the birthdays he missed, the promotions he watched go to people who never even said good morning. He opened his desk drawer and placed his old security badge inside, not to forget, but to remember exactly what it took to get here, and for whom he was fighting. This story wasn't just his anymore. And the spotlight was about to grow much brighter. By the end of the first week, Marcus's nameplate was mounted outside his office. Black letters on brushed steel, Marcus Sanders, Cultural Liaison, International Affairs. It looked official, clean, permanent. Word had gotten out formally this time. The company-wide email hit inboxes Friday morning, sent by Kellerman himself. It was short, clear, and carried weight. He explained Marcus's new role, his unparalleled linguistic background, and more importantly, his proven value in solving critical international business issues. He didn't frame it as charity or a feel-good gesture. He made it clear Marcus was the best person for the job. Period. But that didn't stop the noise entirely. Some managers still grumbled under their breath. Others softened up once they saw Marcus in action. He navigated conversations with foreign clients better than any software, smoothing over potential misunderstandings with his deep cultural understanding and his calm, authoritative military presence. He even corrected mistranslations in old contracts that had cost the company money for years. And he never showed off. He just worked quietly, smoothly, efficiently, better than anyone had expected. On Monday, Marcus was asked to join a meeting with a delegation from Morocco. The company's North African expansion had been stuck for months over miscommunication and mistrust. Marcus walked into the room in a crisp, new, but still modest blazer, sat at the table, and introduced himself in fluent Moroccan Arabic. The room changed. You could feel it, the shift. People leaned in. They listened. Because when someone speaks your language, truly understands your culture, you don't just hear words, you hear respect. After the meeting, one of the Moroccan partners approached Marcus privately. He touched his chest gently, a traditional sign of profound gratitude. "No one's ever done that for us," he said, his eyes filled with emotion. "Not in our language. Not like that. You are a man of honor, Mr. Sanders." Marcus nodded, his voice soft. "You matter, sir. That's all." By midweek, Kellerman made another bold move. He renamed the company's main training room, the very room where all new hires gathered for orientation and where mid-level leaders held workshops. The old, generic plaque outside the door was taken down. In its place, a new, polished brass sign. It read, "The Sanders Hall." No big announcement, no party, just a quiet, powerful sign, a symbolic shift that meant more than flowers or cake ever could. Later that afternoon, Kellerman stood outside the room, watching as a new group of interns filed in. He heard one of them whisper, "Who's Sanders?" A senior staff member, a woman who used to ignore Marcus completely, answered, "He's someone who reminded this place that greatness doesn't always come in a suit. Sometimes, it comes in a uniform, with decades of quiet service." That same day, Marcus found a sealed envelope on his desk. No return address, just his name, handwritten in block letters. Inside was a note. It read, "I used to think I'd be invisible forever. But today, I stood a little taller because of you. Thank you, Mr. Sanders." No signature, just proof that people were watching, people who needed to see what was possible, people who had also been overlooked. Marcus sat there staring at the words, his throat tightening. He didn't cry. He didn't need to, because that was the moment he realized this wasn't just a job. It was a door. A door for others. By month's end, the pilot program, Voice Inside, designed to give workers across departments access to language training, leadership mentoring, and visibility across divisions, was officially launched. It was Marcus's idea, born from his personal journey, and it caught fire. Eventually, Marcus was invited to speak at a logistics leadership summit in Cincinnati where he told his story, not as a motivational tale, but as a reality check for corporate leaders. "I was never just a security guard," he told the hushed crowd, his voice resonating with years of unacknowledged strength. "I was fluent. I was capable. I was ready. I was a decorated veteran of this nation, but nobody ever looked long enough to see it. So the next time you pass someone without a traditional title, or a resume that fits your mold, ask yourself, what are you really missing? What kind of talent are you blind to?" The room was silent. And then, slowly, it rose to its feet, erupting in a full, standing ovation. On his way out, a young man, a minority, approached him, tears glistening in his eyes. My dad's a janitor, he said, his voice thick with emotion, and he speaks 5 languages. I used to be embarrassed to say that. Marcus placed a hand gently on the young man's arm. Don't ever be ashamed of where you come from, son. The only thing to be ashamed of is staying blind to brilliance. He walked out of that building taller than he ever had in his life. Not because of the applause, not because of the promotion, but because he hadn't changed who he was to fit the role. He'd brought himself, every layer of his story, his veteran experience, his dignity, with him. And that made all the difference. Never assume you know someone's worth based on what they wear, where they work, or what their resume says. Talent has no dress code. Intelligence doesn't need permission. And brilliance can walk past you wearing a name tag, holding a mop, or standing guard. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored, keep going. The right person will see you. And when they do, don't be afraid to take that seat at the table. Better yet, bring a few more chairs with you. Comment, respect, and share this story if you believe true talent knows no uniform.